Mr. President.
Senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, here we are. Day number 2 of the Schumer shutdown. Or should we call this the AOC shutdown? After all, when the puppet master gets outmaneuvered by his own radical squad, who's really calling the shots? Shouldn't we give the squad some credit here for this shutdown? Now let me say that a different way. This Democrat shutdown is nothing but a cynical political shutdown, with Senator Schumer kowtowing to his radical left-wing extremists. He's desperately recoiling, fighting to stave off a primary and to save his party from the piranhas in their own midst. Look, I'm sure he feels like he's been steamrolled by President Trump and the overwhelming America First mandate from 78 million American patriots who voted for real change. Everything else, all of their excuses, is just a pathetic smokescreen to hide their failures. But let's take a closer look at some of these Democrat excuses. Again, they're decoys, they're camouflage, and why this is indeed a Schumer shutdown. First of all, there's no substance to their arguments. They want to talk about health care. Boy, do Republicans want to fix health care. But the real problem is the cost of health care. Health care has went up 400%. In the last couple of decades. It's the cost of health care. All my Democrat friends want to do is just keep throwing more and more money, more and more subsidies, making big health care systems rich. Premiums are going to go up 20% this year. 20%. Again, health care is what's leading inflation. If it wasn't for health care inflation, we'd probably be down closer to 2%. So regardless of what happens here in Congress in the next 3 to 4 months, your health care premium is going to go up 20% on average. This shutdown is keeping us from working on the real problem, and that's the cost of health care. Think about Republican solutions that we have out there right now. We have a legislation we call a price tags bill that we hope to debate and mark up in our health care committee this fall. What that bill does is it forces every hospital, surgery center, imaging center to put a price tag on the procedures you're going to have done. Could you imagine walking into a restaurant and not knowing the price of a good Kansas steak versus some cheap grade steak from another country? You couldn't imagine that. So when you're sitting there deciding whether to have your hip replaced at a hospital like in my hometown of Great Bend, America, versus having it done at another facility, you'll see that you can have the same procedure done for maybe a fifth at a cost at other facilities. And by the way, we have better outcomes. We have better customer service as well. So patients deserve price tags. You know, other solutions out there are expanding healthcare savings accounts where you can use pre-tax dollars for different opportunities as well. And then if you really want me to solve the riddle of cost of health care, we need to make America healthier again. And that's why Republicans under President Trump, Secretary Kennedy, were trying to pass policies which would lead to a healthier America. Think about it. 70% of Americans have a chronic disease. You know, you think about heart disease and hypertension, obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, and mental health issues. 90% of the healthcare dollars being spent in this country are spent on those chronic diseases. You think about our youth. 20% of our youth are on a prescription drug. 30% are obese. 40% of our youth have a chronic disease. We have a mental health epidemic in our youth as well. So if you want me to drive down the cost of health care, we need to make a healthier America. We need more transparency. We need to promote innovation. We need to turn patients into consumers again. And then lastly, and most importantly, we need to make America healthy again. And for all the right reasons. You know, the benefit of driving down the cost of health care is just one of them. Think about this. America is spending 18% of its GDP on health care right now. Singapore is spending 4%. Most advanced countries are going to spend half of what we do on health care. People ask, well, then why are our outcomes worse? It's because we're sick. We have sicker people. The incidence of diabetes, of hypertension, all those things going through the roof. That's why our outcomes aren't as good as other countries are. Rural health care. Let's talk about rural health care for a second. My goodness, do I care about rural health care. I was born in a rural hospital. I had an OB practice for 25 years in rural America. I was on call every day, every other day for 25 years. You can call my wife and ask her that we didn't sleep through the night for 25 years. We delivered a baby most every day. And then I was blessed to lead a group of doctors and run that rural hospital for over a decade as well. I oversaw 3 health departments. If anybody understands the importance of rural health care, I think it would be me. And that's why I've spent a lifetime trying to fix all these riddles that we have right now. Now, my friends across the aisle say they're worried that rural hospitals are closing all of a sudden, and that they want to try to fix this issue. Well, they've actually, contributed to the problem. But here's one of the most hypocritical things I've ever heard since being up here. So the Democrats say that they're closing the government because they want to save rural hospitals. But the first thing they're going to do is take $50 billion away from our rural health transformation funding. $50 billion rural health transformation funding, something that I've been working on with this administration since the New Year's, what that would look like if we were able to have the money. But no, what my friends across the aisle want to do, they want to control health care. They want to keep throwing good money after bad money. They think that Medicaid's going to save the day. Let me tell you something about Medicaid. Only 5% of Medicaid funding goes to rural America. 5% of Medicaid funding goes to rural America. Hospitals, doctors lose money on every Medicaid patient we see. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't take care of them. We took care of everybody in our hospital, regardless of their ability to pay, regardless if they were a citizen, not a. We didn't know. We didn't care. We went in and took care of these patients. But certainly, running a private OB practice and running a hospital, I realized that we lose money on every Medicaid patient we see. And having Medicaid is not the same as access to health care. Who in the world even thinks that could be the case? Talk to any doctor, talk to any patient that has Medicaid. Ask them, let's say that they've got a herniated disc in their back. Ask them how long it's going to take to get in to see a neurosurgeon. It's going to take 6 months, it's going to take a year. So in reality, probably less than half of doctors in a true measure participate in Medicaid. It's got to be the most failed system, the biggest waste of money I've ever seen. There are better solutions out there than Medicaid. I'm so excited about, again, solutions. Republicans have solutions. I'm so excited about this transformation fund and the opportunity that does that. Here's what's really rich. Here's what's rich. So there are hospitals closing and pharmacies closing today, tomorrow, last year. But that's a result of the Democrats' failed policies. Our legislation that we passed this year, signature legislation that's going to change the course of America, none of that's going to really kick in for 2 or 3 years. It is just beyond me for the leader of the Democrat Party to sit up here and cry about hospitals closing in rural America today and blaming Republicans. If there's any hospital closing today, tomorrow, next year, the Democrats own it. They own the failed policy, and America gets that. My gosh, I've never heard something so ridiculous in my life. But again, Republicans have solutions, and we want to fix it. One of the ways to fix the failure of why these hospitals are failing is the economy. That hospitals, rural hospitals, are a reflection of the local economy. As agriculture goes, so goes rural America, so goes these hospitals. And by the way, 97% of these rural counties voted for President Trump. He's never going to turn his back on them. We as Republicans are not going to turn our back on them. I wake up every morning trying to figure out, how do we save rural hospitals and rural America? How do we recruit doctors to rural America? How do we recruit nurses to rural America? And all of a sudden, the Democrats have got salvation here, and they care about it? No, they're hiding behind that issue. They are hiding behind it because they don't have any substance to stand on. Again, the ACA has been the rule of the land for 15 years now. If there's any hospitals failing today, and there are, it's because of the overregulation of the ACA. Just like banks consolidating, hospitals consolidating, healthcare consolidating, all these different entities are consolidating because of overregulation created by Democrats. Our rural transformation funding is going to set those rural counties free to do what they think is best with the money. All right, let's go to the next Democrat argument. Let's talk about these COVID-era subsidies for the ACA plans. What a joke. What just absolutely cannot believe they're going to hide behind this one. So think back to the original ACA. So the ACA sets up funding to help supplement insurance premiums for a group of people based upon their ability to pay. So, and that's probably 70–80% of the premium right now on average, is the way it was set up to be. In some cases, it was 95%. But then COVID comes along, and the Democrats boost those subsidies, so that now that many Americans aren't contributing anything to those particular funds. And what this has led to is mass fraud, okay? So these COVID-era subsidies have led to mass fraud. Let me put some dollars and cents on this. When the ACA was first written, they thought we'd be spending maybe $25–50 billion a year on these subsidies. Well, we're spending $150 billion a year on these subsidies. We think that probably a third of that is waste, fraud, and abuse. And I could spend the next half hour talking about why indeed there's waste, fraud, and abuse there within it. But the way it was created allows for waste, fraud, and abuse. I can't fix that today. I can't fix it tomorrow. We need to fund the government and get back to work on this issue. And we know how to do it. But for Republicans that agree to these subsidies be continued, the first thing we got to do is to address the fraud. And I bet that's a 90-10 issue. I bet that 90% of Americans would like for us to fix the fraud in that issue and make sure the people who need it the most are getting the help. So that's one issue on the COVID-era subsidies. The next big issue, I want to go back to the premiums, okay? That's the real issue. These premiums are going to go up 20% this year. So regardless of, again, what we do here, the premiums are going to go up 20%. That's where the sting is coming from, is how much these premiums are going up. And my friends across the aisle just want to keep throwing money at it. They want this corporate welfare where these subsidies are basically enriching big insurance companies. That's exactly what's happening. These subsidies are basically going to this consolidated insurance business out there. Most states like mine only have 2 or 3 insurance carriers left standing. And then when these subsidies go up for the people in the ACA plan, guess what? They're going to use that as an excuse to increase your plan that you're getting through that hardworking job of yours as well. So to have a meaningful discussion about these COVID-era subsidies, we need to, number one, is to address the fraud, and number 2 is we need to address the rate of increase of these premiums as well. And listen to this. Even if this COVID subsidy went away, the federal government on average would be paying 80% of the premium. So we'd be paying 80% rather than 90% of the premium. But if it's gone up, if the premium's gone up 20%, just think about the difference on 80% versus 90%. That's where the sting is truly coming from. When do Democrats want to have a serious conversation about this? The real conversation about the cost of health care. My friends across the aisle want to bring these two issues together. They want to, take a hostage. In order to keep the government open, they're saying you've got to give us these COVID-era subsidies to prolong them. But they're supposed to expire December 31st of this year. The Democrats passed this. It was supposed to be for COVID. And like all the other COVID subsidies that drove us into massive debt, there was a sunset on them. They wrote the law. If they didn't want it to sunset, why didn't they continue the program for infinity, just like they did with the original subsidies? So this to me is two different issues. We have the issue here of keeping the government open, and we have the issue here of health care. And I want to take care of both of them. But it's going to take weeks, probably months, for us to come up with a solution for these COVID subsidies. So I don't think it's fair to keep the government closed down because they weren't willing to talk about this. You know, it's interesting that, we didn't hear a thing about this, at least I didn't, from the minority leader, that he was concerned about this till just a couple of days ago, again, which makes me think he wanted the shutdown. He wanted the shutdown to appease his liberal left base. Here's another argument the Democrats are making. There's a fight about health care for illegal aliens. And I don't think anyone can argue that before our working families tax cut bill, our signature bill that's going to grow the economy, that before that legislation that illegal aliens were getting health care. Even the CBO, and I hate to pick and choose when I use the CBO numbers, but the CBO said 2 million illegal aliens were getting health care subsidies or free health care because of the loose, just unfettered process that states were using to verify who was eligible for Medicaid. That's not me, that's not a Republican. So the CBO said 2 million illegal aliens were getting care each year on the backs of American taxpayers. And I don't know if that number's perfectly accurate, but if it's 1 million, is it 2 million or 3 million, certainly illegal aliens were getting free health care on the backs of American taxpayers. So when the Democrats want to go in there and gut that bill and end the fixes, the loopholes we closed, I don't know how they can look America in the eye and say that that's not the case. But regardless, I think that's a small issue. I think that's a red herring. That's not really what the issue is. It's just one more thing they can argue about to get America's eyes off the true challenge within their own party. The minority leader says we're not negotiating. I just think that's such an untruth, that we're not negotiating. My gosh, the Appropriations Committee, Republican-led Appropriations Committee, has been negotiating since President Trump, well, actually since we were sworn in January. And just nothing but compliments to Senator Susan Collins and her team, and the Democrats on the appropriations team. They're doing their job, but Leader Schumer, Minority Leader Schumer, wants to do this negotiation in the back doors. He wants to continue the status quo where for the government funding, they go back in behind a door in a closed office, the cameras are off, and they want to cut a deal. You talked about the four corners up here, the Speaker of the House, Minority Leader in the House, Minority Leader in the Senate, and then the Majority Leader, the head of the Senate here, of course, John Thune. So Senator Schumer thinks they can go behind closed doors, and there's two New Yorkers in that room, and build all their bridges to nowhere. But Republicans want to fund the government in open daylight through the Appropriations Committee with the lights on, the cameras on. The Appropriations Committee passes legislation. There's 12 buckets of funding to fund this discretionary spending that Senate Republicans are trying to lead here. 12 buckets of funding. Again, under great leadership, they've passed 8 of these 12 buckets out of committee. Now, almost 90% of funding for the federal government discretionary spending, again, of course, that they've already finished the job. Senator Collins has done an incredible job getting it through committee, bipartisan. I mean, you look at the votes on these bills, it's like 25-0, 23-2, 24-1. Huge bipartisan victories done in the light of day, and then those should come here to the floor and let America see exactly what's in them. And if there's a bridge to nowhere in there, let me stand up here and offer an amendment to strike that funding. And then let that senator defend why his or her state should have this bridge to nowhere. That's what's supposed to happen, the light of day. But Senator Schumer wants to go back to the dark ages where he can go in a back room, a back New York room, and then cut a deal for all of his bridges to nowhere. The House, I believe, have passed all 12 of their funding bills out of committee. Now, we've got 3 of those across the floor. There's 5 more sitting there, but Senator Schumer refuses to release anybody on his side to vote for him, even though they voted for them in committee. Why? It's part of the political theater. He wants this shutdown. So I think, America sees this, that we want to negotiate in good faith. But Senator Schumer's idea of negotiating is now to go behind closed doors, where he's one of 4 people in the room, and then go tell the president, who was elected by 28 million people, wants to tell him what to do. So I asked, as we go through this process, I asked myself this morning, so what are AOC and the squad, who are empowered by the liberal legacy media, asking Senator Schumer to do, or really telling him what to do? What are AOC, the squad, the liberal media, what are they demanding from Senator Schumer? Well, they told him to take a hostage, right? So he did. He took a hostage. He took these COVID-era subsidies as hostage, and the $1.5 trillion of added funding as hostage. And now they're asking him to shoot the hostage. So the squad and Senator Schumer, they took the bait. They took the bait hook, line, and sinker. Like jumping into Brer Rabbit's briar patch. And guess what? They're about to get mowed down like dry corn stalks in a Kansas tornado. They took the bait. They took the bait, empowering the White House to finally shrink this federal government. This monster of a beast that we have here now. When Joe Biden was sworn in 2021, there was about 2.8 million federal employees. So President Biden started at 2.8 million. By the time he finished, we had over 3 million federal employees. Now, President Trump has kind of split the difference there. So we're still not back to pre-COVID, pre-Biden levels of federal employment. Look, I'm grateful for every federal employee, and many of them do incredible work. But I think it's no secret that we could all be a little more efficient, that we all could work a little harder. And if we had a few less regulations, I think we would need a few less federal employees as well. I don't want to be, sound calloused or not caring. I'm grateful for every job an American has, but my goal would be to help move these people with some of these federal jobs and move them into the real world and adding to GDP rather than subtracting from GDP. That would be my goal. There's a reasonable number of people we need to do the work of the federal government, but I just think that going from 2.8 million pre-COVID to over 3 million just seems to be too much. So, like I said, the squad has led the Democrat Party into Brer Rabbit's briar patch, and they're about to get mowed down like corn stalks in a Kansas twister. I think the last thing I want to go back to here is the Democrats are saying that they really want to add $1.5 trillion to our debt. Again, we have $37 trillion of national debt now as a nation. We're spending almost $3 billion a day on interest. That's right, America, $3 billion a day on interest alone, $1 trillion a year, and they want to add $1.5 trillion to our national debt. But get this, in November of this last year, America rejected that plan, okay? That's why the voters gave Republicans the White House, the House, and the Senate. They didn't want us to borrow another $1.5 trillion. So what's motivating the squad? What's motivating Senator Schumer to do this, to shut down the government? What's motivating their lust for power and their control of the American people? I think the socialists have always thought if you control health care, that's the first step in controlling the people, right? So what's motivating them? I think number one is let's just be frank here, it's Trump derangement syndrome. I think that's their number one motivation to shut the government down, is Trump derangement syndrome. They have a hatred for President Trump that I've never seen anything like this before in my life. I think the second reason is the liberal left has not realized they lost the election. You know, you go through these stages of grief, and denial is the first one. The liberals still have not realized they lost the election. 78 million people voted for Republicans to control the House, the Senate, and the White House, that they're rejecting the Democrats' lust for power to control Americans, to borrow from our grandchildren. So that's their motivation. Look, if they want to change these policies, then go win the election. If you want to change the policies, go win the election. You know, I think back to 2020. And the Democrats had a sweep, right? The Democrats swept the elections in 2020, and they added $2 trillion a year of debt. So they grew the budget from about $5 trillion to $7 trillion overnight. But when it came to keeping the government open, the Republicans didn't go back to them and say, hey, we're going to keep the government open if you decrease your spending by $2 trillion a year. We didn't take that hostage. We could have. We could have. Does that make the sense comparing 2020 election to this election? The Democrats swept in 2020. They came in and added $2 trillion of spending. But over a dozen times, Republicans walked the plank and said, we'll keep the government open. I wasn't happy about that then. I'm not happy about it now. I'm not happy about the spending levels that we're fighting for right now. I think that they're way too much. If you want to continue your liberal socialist policies, Democrats, go win an election. Go win an election. We came through with a bill for America to cut taxes, to grow jobs, to make the government more efficient. And look what's happening. You know, the gas prices are down, grocery prices are down, the border's secure. All those types of things are happening under Republican leadership. We want to address the cost of health care. We truly, truly do. I want to point out that we're just not going to negotiate borrowing another $1.5 trillion or continued throwing money at health care issues in order to keep the government open. Again, this is apples and oranges. We need to open the government back. We need to fund the government for a couple months, a clean CR. Let Senator Collins and her team, working with Democrats, get that other 10% of funding across the finish line. In 2 months' time, we can bring those bills to the floor in front of the American public, debate them, offer amendments, make senators defend their bridges to nowhere, as I call them, and then continue the work on health care. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. When $5 trillion is being spent on health care in this country every year, and all these big corporations are grabbing that money as it goes by their front desk, it's not going to be easy to drive down the cost of health care, but we have to do it. To me, this is common sense. We're asking the Democrats to vote for a clean CR based upon levels of spending that every Senate Democrat in here that was in office voted for just 7 months ago. 7 months ago, every Democrat in here voted for these spending limits. Again, a dozen times under Joe Biden, Republicans walked that plank and kept the government open. I pledge to you, I pledge to every Democrat, no one's going to work harder than I will to help solve this riddle for health care, focused on driving the cost of health care down. But at the end of the day, this shutdown keeps us from doing the real work of the people, from having real debates about the cost of health care, our national debt, our spending, all those things. During a shutdown, things freeze up here. And we can't do the work that we need to do in our committees to address these different problems. One of our presidents once said this, and I'm going to quote him. I know that it's said that one of the easiest things in the world is to give away somebody else's money. But government does not have money except the money it takes from people. And so every time we talk about spending money on this or that program, on health care or COVID subsidies. Let's remember that the government has no money except what it takes from the people. And the people know that, and they're feeling it. They're feeling the pain of the government taking so much money. That's my quote. Go back to the president's quote here. And the people are tired of big government taking all the money they earn. Boy, if you're a senator up here and you're listening to anybody back home, I think you understand folks back home are tired of big government taking all the money they can earn. So I ask my friends across the aisle, and they truly are friends. There's not an enemy. There's not a Democrat I would call an enemy. President Reagan said he had no political enemy, only political opponents. You know, no different than we see gladiators on Sunday playing these football games, and at the end of the game, they're shaking each other's hands. Both parties should fight for what they think is right. But if we stay fixed on the goals, the common goals, working towards a balanced budget, keeping the government open, driving down the cost of health care, all these things, I bet most of us agree on those goals. But in the meantime, we need to keep the government open. We need to pass a clean CR. Again, let's let the Appropriations Committee continue their negotiation to do their job as we all work together up here. So as long as we stay on those same goals of like I said, we want to keep the government open, we want to work towards a balanced budget, I want to fix health care, I want to fix the cost of health care. Anyone up here that agrees on those same goals, I'll reach out my hand across the aisle and I pledge that we'll listen and work together in good faith. But for today, let's pass a clean CR. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.